you only speak positively about your spouse.
Ooh.
I know as guys, we may be at the bar, we may be around the fire smoking cigars, and
Yeah.
oh man, did my wife? Can you believe what she did? And you slam them and you diss them, and it was like, no, you always lift up your spouse. You never tear them down.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Mel, and welcome to Life Coaching by Mel. Here at Life Coaching by Mel, we focus on the ways, the will, and the word of God, His truth. We ain't talking about my truth, your truth. He is our indeed line of demarcation. The word of God is what we stand for. And also, what I love to do on this channel here is bring on individuals that I find interest in, and I find interest in their story, that I believe that can really motivate and help a lot of people in my audience. We have a lot of things out there that we're dealing with in our society, but we have a lot of opinions, but also we need people who are experienced. We need people who have gone through the fire, have gone through the issues of this world, of various issues. But today is no different. I have a good buddy of mine, Eric Billingsly, who is here. Man, Eric, first off, how are you?
Man, I'm doing great, and I am so honored to be here
Wow.
on your podcast. So thank you for letting me experience this.
Man, it's my honor, man. We good buddies, man. We met at church. That's how we initially met, but we've been hanging out here and there since, and it's been great. Eric's a great guy, but you're also, in my opinion, have an amazing marriage. From the outside looking in, I'm interested today to get some of those insights, man, because how long have you been married, if you mind me asking?
30 years.
Wow.
We got married in May of '93.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been fun. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been fun.
Yeah, that's what we love to hear about, and because a lot of people on my channel, I'm in my second marriage now. I've talked about my initial divorce several times on the channel, and people ask the question, man, how can you do it again? How could you go into that again? Because there's a lot of opinions, like I mentioned earlier, about marriage nowadays in our society, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I just want to kind of start with your story a little bit.
Sure.
Growing up, what was your thoughts and expectations for marriage?
Oh goodness. Well, my parents were married for, I want to say, 30 plus years before my mom died of cancer. So my mom and dad always modeled a great marriage for me. So when I think back on my thoughts on it, honestly, I really didn't have much, because there's a lot of things in life when things are going well, that's not what you concentrate on, right? You think about the things where there's problems or issues or not going well. So because I was raised in in what I would say is a good household, I really didn't give much thought to that till much later, and until I was into my marriage. So growing up, I really didn't give much insight into that.
Yeah, that's an emphatic point that you mentioned there, because especially as kids and adolescents, we talk a lot about trauma and the things that you go through, but it's only really the bad things you kind of harp on and kind of think about as you get older, especially in your 20s. You start to divulge and think about the things that you experienced as a kid, normally the bad things.
Right.
So but that's awesome, and I really love that. And like you said, a lot of we really harp on our challenges, and it's easy to talk about the issues, but let's praise a lot of times. Well, it's good to praise our parents in the good moments.
Yes,
that's incredible. So tell us about how you met your wife.
Well, so we met at college, the orientation week before our freshman year.
Wow.
And so, so this was great. I love to tell this story, that we met that week, and we were just kind of a large group hanging out and doing things. And I went up at the end of the week. She had her camera there. This was back in the days of film. You didn't have, right? So you didn't know when they were going to come out.
Right.
You don't know what they looked like, right? And so she had her camera there, and it was the last day, and taking pictures with other people. I came up to her, and I did a selfie before selfies were selfies, right? Took her camera and just turned it around, put my arm around her, took the picture. So then, you couldn't see it, right? It's filmed. So I went back home to Indiana. She's in Oklahoma, and then she showed that she got the film developed, right? And she showed her mom, and her mom's like going through the pictures. Oh, who's this boy? And I made such an impact. My wife goes, I don't remember. So yeah, so my lasting impression there was not very good.
Right.
But then school started, and then our group, we still kind of hung out together as a group of 10 to 12 of us. And then as the semester kept going and the school year went on, we kept trying to find time for just the two of us to go do things without the big group. And so then that's how we ended up taking that group dynamic into just Eric and Amy dynamic. So,
I love it. And you think about moments like that, and it's a lot of people who may be in that situation now that they have a group of friends, especially in our environments like church. You have group of friends that you go out, hang out with all the time, and maybe you are starting to find someone that you have interest in. But pulling that trigger, and making that actual deal, an actual thing, sometimes it's hard to navigate. So what would you say was the moment that you realize, okay, she is the one I want to chase and want to make my wife?
Well, the one I wanted to chase was, we just interacted well together, and she's beautiful, and so it's like, hey, chase a beautiful woman. She could sing really well, and that attracted me to her as well. Maybe that's because I'm so poor at that the opposite attract mentality for that piece of it.
All right.
She just had a beautiful smile. So there was just, and she was always fun. She was, life of the party. So it's like, hey, this seems like a good, good person to go. And, from that first level, right. Dynamics, that's what I was choosing to go and try to, somebody to date.
Right.
And then as for how I knew she was the one for marriage, I would say it was probably when she came home from college to spend the summer. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Indiana. College was in Oklahoma, and she grew up in Oklahoma. So for her to spend a summer in Indiana, and she lived with friends from church, so she wasn't living there in our house, but still spent the entire summer there. It's like, okay, I think this is the one, if she's willing to put up with me and come home with me for a summer. So yeah, and that's what sealed it.
Yeah. So what was it about that, her coming home, that was like, this is, it seemed right?
Yeah, I guess I had never really had many serious girlfriends before, so it's like, okay, if I've got one that's this serious, then maybe this is the one. Right. I may not get another chance. Right. And so she's willing to put up with me with all my quirks and craziness and stuff. So it's like, yeah, this is, and obviously sharing the same values that we did. We went to a Christian university, so we had those like-minded values. And that was the other thing is okay, if you don't find that like-minded spouse in college, then where am I going to find them? Especially when you're at a Christian school, when people typically have the same values there. It's like, okay, once we graduate, that becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. You say 30 years now. And that's a lot of, first of all, a lot of time.
Yes, definitely.
And I'm sure probably feel like it flew by, but there's a lot of knowledge and lessons that you picked up during that time. So if you had to say a valuable marriage lesson that you've learned, through that time that's been beneficial for you, what's something you could share with us?
Oh man, there's so many. But first off, I don't want to allude to the fact that, I did everything right.
Yeah.
There are many times I did the wrong thing. And so I learned from that. So I guess first thing is when you make a mistake, recognize, don't try to do the same thing twice. Right? Learn from your mistakes. But I guess study your wife, or your spouse, right? I assume we're predominantly probably talking to men.
Right.
But I would say become a student of your wife. Know what makes her tick, right? How does she feel loved, right? Because there may be things like, hey, I'm going to keep buying her these gifts. And she's like, why do you keep buying me stuff? I don't want stuff. I just want you to spend time with me. That's what I want. Right. So there's a great book out there, The Five Love Languages,
Yeah.
so beneficial with your spouse and, future kids. There's the other side of it was what was huge for us. And we were maybe 10 to 12 years into our marriage before we learned about the different temperaments or personalities of what made each other tick. Where she finally understood how my personality was. I'm very non-competitive. I am very easygoing. And so she is very competitive. And so for a competitive person, they're like, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing more? Go, attack, and I'm like going, what's the big deal? Just relax. Why are you so high strung? Just, and if you don't understand that about the other person, you may be trying to help them, right? And in the sense, once you recognize who they are, then you work within that dynamic. And so I would say that was a game changer for us, was really finding out that other person's temperament and who they were, and then not trying to change them.
Yeah.
So,
man, it's beautiful, and I know that's beneficial for someone, and definitely me. As I'm in my second marriage and my second go around, I'm learning those things. Like you mentioned, that studying, and it's something you can learn almost every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was taught to us. Part of all of this is we were in Houston for 18 years, and was at an amazing church down there, First Colony Church of Christ. And so there were, we had so many great mentors there, and the learning that came about from those other spouses and that had the marriage, they were the ones sitting there with 25, 30 years speaking into us. And one that I don't remember who exactly, but I just remember part of what came out of that is you only speak positively about your spouse.
Ooh.
I know as guys, we may be at the bar, we may be around the fire smoking cigars, and oh man, did my wife, can you believe what she did? And you slam them and you diss them. And it was like, no, you always lift up your spouse. You never tear them down. Even jokingly. So now there will be times where, you may have that close friend, that close colleague, and it's like, hey dude, I'm frustrated. My wife did this. But that's a one-on-one with somebody very close where you're not trying to tear down, you're trying to build up. But kind of the rule of thumb is to always speak kindly.
Yeah. It seems self-explanatory, but I kind of want to ask, what makes that so potentially detrimental if you speak badly?
Well, for one, if you're speaking, that's the closest person to you and the person you love. And it's like, if you're speaking bad about them, what's that say about everybody else in your life? And number one is, it's a way of affirming your spouse and showing them that you value them, of saying, hey, I know this is maybe the way the culture and the stereotype of what guys do when they get together, but part of the counterculture we're expected to be a part as Christians is I'm only gonna, I'm gonna speak positively about her, and it goes both ways, and it ends up it's one of those little things that you just put those deposits in the bank that creates a greater balance on your relationship, that helps build that draws you closer together. So,
man, that's powerful. That's very powerful. So speaking of things that draw you closer together, how important is it to invest into your marriage and during your 30 years, in what ways have you invested?
Yeah. So, man, that's a good question. So I would say investing in your marriage, as I alluded to a couple of times, right? This is your closest relationship, right? That if you're not investing in it, then how do you expect it to turn out well? As men, we're very, with work, sports, athletics, how much do we invest in other items where we want to see success? You know, that job, that promotion, you know, we're investing daily in what do I need to do? Your sports, your athletics, whatever that may be, you're putting in the time, the effort to achieve those intermediary successes as you go up. So wherever we want to see success, we invest in that time. So if you want a successful marriage, then you need to invest there. You can't just expect it just to turn out well if you never put in the time and effort into that. And so the ways that we did it, and again, church was so key and pivotal in this. And so I guess the overarching theme in that is God plays a significant part of our marriage. Always, I originally heard it viewed as like a triangle of you've got you know, husband and wife at the base and then God at the center. So as you draw closer to God, you draw closer to each other. And so it's like, oh man, that's powerful. Yeah. So the different ways we invested in that was, you know, early on, we would go to marriage conferences. We did that once or twice, and that was, yeah, as a guy, that was not fun.
I was just about to say like something.
Like, oh man, but that's not how I wanted to spend my weekend. That is not how I want. But you look back on it on the backside, and it was, you know, a key area that helped in the long run. And that's part of kind of where this goes, is sometimes you have to do the hard things. You know, you pray together. That's a good, because then you hear what's on the other person's heart, and that's good. Sometimes we'd read books together, like a marriage book. So, you know, you're laying in bed and it's like, all right, let's read a chapter out loud together. There was a book, Love and Respect. We did that. You know, they had classes at church, and we would, you know, attend those classes. So those were, you know, and we wouldn't do this like all the time, right? It's like, you know, every 2 to 3 years, hey, this is coming up, let's do that, right? So, you know, when I say do this, it's not like every month where let's do that, you know. It's like, no, it's, you know, you space them out, and you know, and it gives you a little bit of time to work on those things. So,
and when you say that that you don't do it every month or you know, regimented, it made me think about, is it important to even do that when the times get the roughest? So it kind of leads me to my next question. You know, the honeymoon phase is real. You know, people talk about that all the time, and it's incredible. You know, both parties are full of energy, you know, doing what they need to do to make everything work. But then the inevitable of honeymoon phase ends. You know, life changes start to occur, and kids come, things like that. So what has been your experience when it comes to those particular changes or those type of changes, and how do we handle that type of change?
So the best thing I can think of in this, and you alluded to it, is like when the kids come, because to me, it's easy, right? It's not, nothing's easy. You know, the life hacks for marriage there are none, right? It's hard, right? There are no hacks to get through it. You got to invest, right? But to get, so to me, the kids are the biggest challenge that happens in marriages. And so for us, it was coming to the realization, and we took a parenting class on this, that kids are an addition to the family. You, as just husband and wife without kids, you are a family. And the kids are an addition to it. The kids are not what make you a family. And so
that just freed somebody right there. It really did. That's powerful.
Yeah. And so what we then do is we then change the way our marriage operates, and we put the child at the center, and we start operating our family around the child. And that's fine when they're 6 months old, 9 months old, right? They can't do anything. But at some point you have to make that transition to know the child is no longer the center. They are part of this family, and they need to learn how to adapt to the rest of us. And so not becoming a child-centered family. It's hard. It's hard. Not, you know, that doesn't mean you ignore them and they don't, but it's just, they need to learn where they fit within the family. And so then you still have to take your wife out on date nights, right? She's typically, not as much anymore, but typically it's the mom who stays home, right? That may not be the case everywhere, but if that is the case, then hey, she needs a break from that. And guys, we need to do our part in giving them a break. And so you gotta let your wife take that time away, and take care of her. So
Yeah. You kind of like the king of segues right now, because you kind of hit on something else I want to mention. I want to talk about here. When you say typically, the wife is at home, and of course there was a age that we lived in that was the dynamic in America, predominantly, but now is, has changed tremendously. More stay-at-home fathers and women, have full range and full ability to be equal, basically, to put it in the best frame. So regarding marriage, what would you say has been the biggest change in America, or what is the differences overall in the way America views marriage when you initially got married to now?
Yeah. I'm not sure that it's changed as much, but I think the biggest change overall is marriage is nowadays it's viewed more contractual versus covenantal, right? Marriage is a covenant before God. And so I feel like too often the sides go in and see it as, hey, this is a contract, and as long as these things are met, we're good. If they're not met, then hey, we can split up later. And so I would say, going in knowing that that it's for life. Now that doesn't mean there's not always some circumstances. There are biblical circumstances, right? And so I understand that, but I would say the predominant issues in America are not due to that, for marriages falling apart. The other side is marriage is not 50-50. Too often we go in thinking, hey, it's 50-50. I do my part, you do your part. I would say it's 100-100. And recognizing that, if I'm saying, well, I did this, I expect you to do that, versus, hey, I need to go in thinking I'm going to do as much as I can, and they're going to do as much as you can. And then you've got a lot of overlap. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to sit down and figure out who has certain responsibilities here and there. But if you have the mindset that it's 50-50, split down the middle, and hey, they didn't live up to their side of it, they're not giving their full, meeting their half, then I think you're coming in with the wrong mindset. So
that's pretty big there, Eric. 'Cause I talk about a lot on the channel how a lot of people come in marriage, kind of with one foot in nowadays, and one foot out, just kind of anticipating or, kind of anticipating a letdown, and if they receive it, especially in the first 5 years,
you're going to be let down. and you're going to let them down, right? And you're going to let them down, right? I mean, it's going to happen.
It's written in it. It's part of it.
We're human,
right?
We're human,
absolutely. So. And that's why I think what you're talking about, that covenant, is why God designed it that way. America and any culture that represents marriage, they're taking a biblical principle. Marriage is a biblical principle first. It's something that God designed. He designed it that way for the inevitable letdowns, for the moments where we are human, and for us to strictly make it contractual, like you mentioned. I agree with you on that. For us to do that is to me out of the will of God, and it's us, completely ruining God's original design. And I'm saying this as a divorced man, but and I'm saying this, from the standpoint of what I've learned, but also I kind of knew it then as well. I knew that I fought. That's why I fought so long to save my first marriage. What has happened through my channel, with me talking about my divorce, so many people have come on and they're afraid, either to be married or to get married again. And I recently saw something talking about that there are more single people over 40 than ever before. It says in 2021, a quarter of 40-year-olds in the U.S. had never been married. and up to 20, and that was up from 20% in 2010 and 6% in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, Eric, for those that are watching,
Yeah.
for those who have those fears in 2023, what makes marriage worth it?
That's good. I think also out of the studies that you find is that those 40-year-olds, that those that aren't married, that they are lonely. That they are lonely. And I think you find that more people may be living together than married. And so I would say the marriage part, so if you're living together, then there's no commitment there, right? Because basically you're saying, hey, I want out, right? If we're not going to get married, then I'm keeping in my back pocket that card that I want to play that says I'm not committed to you, I'm going to leave, right? And so I would say, why go through that, right? And that the marriage part is you have a partner there that that is there for you no matter what. The ups, the downs. You have somebody there that, to me, I can come home to, and I know somebody is there to that has my best interest. That's going to love me no matter what. If you want to know what my faults are, ask my wife. Right? No one knows you, right, and knows your faults as good as your spouse. And so, but yet she loves me despite of those, and that is worth it to know that life is hard. Getting through life is the challenges, but knowing that I have somebody here to fight the challenges of life, to fight with. And to me, kids are a blessing. So the best way, if we're going to bring kids into the world, and I think that is a benefit of marriage, to bring kids into the world, the best thing we can do for those kids is to give them a healthy marriage. And so. And then, I'll go there here. I'll go here.
Go there.
That the same studies, I think by Pew Research, says that those that enjoy intimacy the most are those that are in a healthy marriage. So, hey, good marriage, good sex. So.
I would have to agree. As someone who has, I've had my story, put it like that. I've been out there, and I'm not proud of it, but God delivered me. But I have experienced premarital sex, and I know what it feels like. That guilt that you have, if you're a Christian, especially, or just the lack of fulfillment, because it's not a wholeness, unless you are purely committed to this person and you are one. And so I feel you on that for sure, man. And that's 100% true. Man, it's such a great answer, man. You talked about so much here, and what you just said about marriage, and earlier you talked about the church aspect and just the community that you've had. And I would say, man, just me and Vera, first I want to say I really appreciate you guys, because I think about what you're saying, like no one knows you like your wife, of course, but having community and having, church friends in those hard times, so you guys have been there for us a lot, whether it be with prayers or encouraging words through some of our hard times. We only been married 2 years, but been through a lot already, and but that's what it's all about, man. And I couldn't imagine, going through those things, the individual things I went through, not having Vera by my side. Just to think about our first few months of marriage, she was in the hospital, I was in the hospital individually, and the hospital, when the nurse comes in, she asking for socials, she asking for information that normally would be, HIPAA violation, or normally would be, first to kin, or whatever it's called there, the kid, your parents or whatever have to step in. If you ain't married, you can't say nothing. Your spouse, your parents have to come in, or your sisters or whatever. Your boyfriend don't get the same latitude that a husband get. People don't think about things like that, but also, just having people like you guys there, during those hard moments. That's what I'm saying. You going through life, and the ups. You probably don't need friends. You don't need a spouse. You don't probably need God during those high times and the up times. But when things get rough, and not
It's
saying marriage is not enjoyable. It's tremendously enjoyable, but when things get rough, that's when you realize what you have in your corner.
Absolutely. And yeah, I don't, hope I alluded to it throughout, but I think, the main piece for us is, always having God there, going to church together, taking those classes, reading those books. They're Christian based books.
Yeah.
Because the culture, the tides of culture change, right? And so, but Christianity, what the church is built on, and the good book, what the Bible says, doesn't change.
All right.
And so, if that's what you're building upon, then it'll last through the changes of the culture.
Absolutely.
And so, the fundamentals that we were taught, 25, 30 years ago are still holding true today.
Yeah.
So
true. And that's amazing, man. So you mentioned a lot through today. You have the 5 love languages. You mentioned resources that you've had through conferences. Is there any other resources you could think of, or books or tools that you can recommend for anyone that's looking to learn further?
Yeah, well, I don't know them by name. I would say any of the temperament or personality test.
Right.
More, the old one is like the Myers-Briggs, but not, that's a little bit, but it's along those types of quizzes.
Right.
But any of those personality type, and that's something fun to do with your spouse. Go out to dinner or take the test ahead of time, then go out to dinner and talk through it.
Right.
But yeah, I'd go to a Christian bookstore and see what was on the shelves, but today that's a bookstore. What? I mean,
yeah.
So you kind of prove, okay, what does Amazon have within the Christian book, right? So it's a little different.
Right.
But yeah, just finding whatever method, today, finding different podcasts, right? You can do that. Listen to a podcast together.
Right.
That is centered on both husbands and wives.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome, brother. So I really appreciate you, Eric, once again for coming on, man. I just want to allow you any final words, any message or advice that you would like to, convey to the listeners as we wrap up today's.
Oh man. Well, thank you. And I would just say, learn your spouse, always speak positively about them, and keep God at the center and pray with them. And that'll it's not going to ensure things, but you're starting off in the right direction.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. Man, guys, thanks so much for watching today. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. Hit me in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this topic. Leave Eric some amazing positive energy. Let me know what you think, guys. Is marriage still worth it?
Let's go.